Let's get ready to rumble!
Right. Hello and welcome to Netflix versus Cinema, being recorded on the day in which the government of this country has truly become a carry-on movie. My name is Tosin and I am the host up in the Midlands near Birmingham. Joining me as always on the Isle of Wight, Sharon Bollen.
Hello.
And if his internet allows, Shaun Harris.
Hello.
Oh wow, that was an almighty pause. So the internet may or may not be our friend here with Shaun today. So what we do on this show, Netflix versus Cinema, a bit like the name suggests, we go to the cinema each week and we watch a couple of things. Then we stay at home and we watch a couple of things and we rate them all out of 5. And in today, when things are changing and whether cinema is fighting for its life and wondering whether it's actually a viable financial thing, we see where our money has been better spent this week. Has it been spent on Netflix or has it been spent on cinema? Is Netflix winning or does cinema still have some fight left in the old dog yet? So, this week, if we just want to kick off with saying, Sharon, let's start off with you. Tell us what you saw at the cinema.
I have seen a drama called Emily at the cinema.
Emily, yeah, that I thought would be right up your alley.
Yeah.
I thought that would be right up your alley. And you also saw something else, but it was a bit of a like one of the things cinema's been doing, like anniversary showings, isn't it?
Yes, Shaun and I, we went to see the 35th anniversary. Just saying those figures to make your head go a bit like, what?
I know.
The 35th anniversary of Lost Boys at the cinema.
It's weird, isn't it? Because, you think of something like The Lost Boys and it's all about youth and it's all about, like, angsty youth counterculture of the day. And you think, no, but it can't be 35 years old. They're angsty young countercultural people.
And all those young people are like in their 60s. And
yeah, and you think all those young people are probably grandparents now. probably grandparents now. Oh, right. So, Shaun, if you can hear us, what did you see at the cinema this week? Okay, it looks like Shaun might not be able to hear us. Or Shaun might hear us in about 5 minutes' time. I'm not sure which one it is. So, okay, but so with that, I think I have seen nothing at the cinema. Because I am really beginning to wonder whether my cinema going days are over. I'm beginning to wonder whether life has just said, no, you have a child that's a certain age now and that's it, no more cinema for you. Because everything the last week has been busy, and it seems like every time. Let me put it this way. I had a chance to go to the cinema on Tuesday night. I was going to see Ticket to Paradise. And in the end, I just went, you know what? I think my life would be enhanced if I just stayed at home and slept. Which is what I did. Which is what I did on Tuesday night. So I haven't seen anything in the cinemas. But at home, I have finished seeing She-Hulk. She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. Which is... Marvel's doing things. Let's just say Marvel is doing things. Shaun, can you hear us now?
I can hear you, but I can't. You're not moving, but I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I've moved downstairs, so
we can hear
I'm
you.
hoping it'll be a better signal.
Yeah, we can hear you, and you are moving.
I can't see you. You're not moving.
Yeah. Well, for us, you are moving. Shaun.
Okay, cool.
Cool. That's it. So, what did you see at the cinema this week?
Okay, the cinema this week. Obviously, I went to see The Lost Boys with Sharon.
Yep.
Which it was really busy. I reckon that they're going to be making more money from these anniversary films than they are from the stuff that's being released. Also, I went to see Halloween Ends.
Yeah.
And Amsterdam. Amsterdam. Yeah, Amsterdam.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, so the 3 films in cinema we're going to talk about this week are going to be Emily, Amsterdam, and Halloween Ends. I'll leave Halloween Ends to the end because no fan.
Yeah.
And okay, so that means let us start. And at home, what did you see at home, Shaun?
At home, I saw. I think we're saving it till next week. The Rings of Power, but there was also a movie on Netflix called The War Below.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I've said She-Hulk Attorney at Law. And there's something else I've seen that I will remember before the end of the show, and we will review that last. Because I will remember what it is that I've seen. But let us kick off. Let's kick off with Amsterdam. Amsterdam, the big old star-studded David O. Russell, who can produce magic but can also produce pretentious mess. and this film, I think, has divided opinion as to which one of those two things it is. So, Shaun, tell us a little bit about Amsterdam. What do you think it is? What is it about? And what did you think about it?
It's about Well, it starts off in World War One in the trenches, and there's American black troops, and I thought, oh, and they were wearing French uniforms, and like one of the officers who's like the general that really likes them more or less says, oh, they wouldn't fight with Americans, won't fight with them. So if we dress them up in French uniforms, then they could be French Algerians or whatever, so they could still fight, but they wouldn't be sort of classed as Americans. And then they need an officer to take this regiment, so Christian Bale turns up, and they quite like each other. He's a pretty good officer for them, and then they're going to do this mission, but they all end up something not very nice happening, and they all end up in hospital, and they meet a nurse and they form like this trio of like buddies,
So Christian Bale, John David Washington, and Margot Robbie.
Yeah. They form this like trio in Amsterdam because the war's finished. They in Amsterdam, and then Christian Bale character decides that he's going to go back to America, leaving the other two in Amsterdam, and then eventually the other chap moves out, but the girl doesn't. And anyway, then it goes into like he's Christian Bale character is a doctor that helps World War vets from, like if they've got injuries or something, he gives them masks, face masks, and helps them out and all that.
Yep.
And the other chap becomes a lawyer and goes for compensation. And then it becomes like a private investigative film because it goes, oh, I want to hire you to this lady. She gets killed, and then you go into, shall we say, the top society of. I don't really want to give away any spoilers now because this is.
Okay, all right. So, no spoilers. But from what I can understand, this becomes kind of like a whodunit kind of screwball detective story. Would that be accurate?
The Yeah. Hello, you there?
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah, I broke up. Okay, the Margot Robbie character. So they meet up. So they all meet up together, and they meet up and go through a site, and they want to see this general. So, yeah, I can't really say much more than that because I think it'll be a spoiler because it's quite important the way it goes. So they're mixing with high society, and they're mixing with like lots of right wing people, and so it becomes a bit of a mystery. It's rather long, though. It's rather long, to be honest. So it started off really good. It intrigued me. I really like the French uniforms. You know me with my authenticity and stuff. I really like
with your accuracy of anything war related.
And I could imagine, because when I first saw them, I thought, what? Oh, French troops. But so they've actually got the French uniforms, and it made sense. You know what I mean? The Americans won't fight with them, so they have to. Why are we wearing these damn French uniforms? Well, Americans won't fight with you. Anyway, what I would say about this film is I liked it in parts. It had a lot of characters in, there was a lot of characters that turned up.
Yep.
I did find some parts rather laborious and a bit long and a bit dull, and it was really, really sort of padded out with stuff which could have been told. There's a lot of interaction.
More economically.
Yeah, more economically. Yeah, there's a lot of interaction between the three of them, but the acting was very good. The acting was good. I mean, I always rate Christian Bale really highly. But on the whole, I found it a little bit too long.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean? It's one of those films that just sort of dragged on a bit. And sometimes, I don't know, is the director a bit self-indulgent, is he, with some of his movies? Or... Yeah. Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. That's my thoughts come to the fore, was that, this dude's a bit self-indulgent, and he's obviously playing around a little bit. And...
I feel like David O. Russell is the kind of director that I feel a bit like him. The way I feel about Tarantino. I know that I know in your mind, Shaun, Tarantino can do no wrong.
No.
But for me, Tarantino does get indulgent sometimes, and he's best. Yeah. He's best when he has somebody to hold him back. When you're watching the film, you can almost sort of see somebody going, I don't think people are gonna get that, Quentin. You think you wanna? And if he has a if he has a big hit on his hands, and then they let him do whatever he wants in the next film, you know it's going to be like over 3 hours long, and you know that there's only going to be a small niche of people who are going to understand what he's doing. And I feel like David O. Russell's a bit like that. He directed The Fighter, where Christian Bale won an Oscar for. He directed American Hustle. He directed Silver Linings Playbook.
Right.
And so Robert De Niro, for instance, has become a guy who always shows up in his films. And so and in these films, you can see the ones where people didn't expect that much from him because they're tighter. But then when he has a hit and things go well, it goes a bit out there. And you get like, there's a film called I Heart Huckabees that he did that is very, very, some would say out there, some would say daring, some would say self-indulgent. And so yeah, with David O. Russell, I expect that he's going to do something very, very esoteric. He's going to do something very his own thing. And some people would think, it's a genius. And some people would be like, that was a load of nonsense.
Yeah, this had a bit of both. It had some good moments and it had a lot of laborious moments. So, yeah, I mean, it was okay. It was well acted. It was quite interesting, but it was no sort of gem, no hidden gem or anything like that.
So how many stars would you give
this would be a 3-star, just a straight
All right.
3-star, an okay movie, yeah.
3 stars. So 3 stars for, what was it again? Amsterdam. 3 stars for Amsterdam. All right, cool. And now we go over to streaming stuff, Netflix and Friends. And Sharon, you didn't see anything at home this week, did you?
Not on streaming. The only thing I saw was a long documentary by Lucy Worsley on the Suffragettes. So I don't know if that's the only thing I had seen on at home. And that was on a catch-up service. I saw that on the BBC iPlayer.
Oh, no, I think that counts.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, that works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've seen the whole thing then?
Yes.
All right, cool. Talk to us about Lucy Worsley.
Lucy Worsley is a historian, and she does British historian. She does a lot on the royals. She does a lot on sort of women in through history. She has women's place in sort of history at the time. So she is sort of like an expert, and she's a scholar and a writer, and she's humorous as well. So she did this. It's an 1.5 hour long documentary about the suffragettes.
And she does love dressing up, doesn't she?
She does dressing up. So
is that the blonde?
She did dress up.
Is that the blonde lady with the she's got like
she has a bit of a lisp.
Little tiny bit of a lisp because
Yes,
she's brilliant.
that's the
I love her stuff.
Yeah. So this was, I hadn't seen it before. It's a couple of years old now. I think it was originally made to tie in with the anniversary of the women's suffrage movement, the anniversary when women did get the vote. But it's for all that, it was, it's a fat gripping story. Basically, it starts off how the fight for women's voting. It started off with the suffragist movement, which started in the sort of Victoria's day in like the 1850s, and the first sort of 50 years of their existence, they basically asked politely, saying, women should have the vote, because there was a fight going on about. It started off about addressing women's lack of rights, in that they had no right over their property. They had no right, once they were married, their husband basically owned their property and owned their children, and they had no basic rights of their own. And it started off joined hand in hand with like the temperance movement, where people campaigned for people to sort of abstain from alcohol, because basically what was happening, men would be leaving the factories, and then on their way home they'd be passing half a dozen pubs, and so potentially by the time they got home they'd have like pence left, and they would hand over to their wives, because their wives had no money, means of it earning an income, had no money of their own, would be given like 3 pence to feed them and like 10 children. And women were absolutely in desperate situations. They had no recourse in law, or they had no one who would support them. So the women's suffrage movement started really early on in like the 1850s, 1860s. So by the time it got to sort of 1905, women were basically fed up of asking politely for 40 years to be completely ignored. So the radical sort of women's suffragette movement started with people like Emmeline Pankhurst, who decided that if polite means are not working, we are going to take more direct means. And this documentary charts basically the escalation from starting off basically writing petitions, rallies and speeches, to actually turning radical. And one of the first acts of what they were doing was deliberately getting themselves arrested and deliberately getting themselves sent to prison. And a guaranteed way of getting sent to prison in sort of 1905, 1908 was actually assaulting a police officer. So whenever they were challenged at rallies, they would like spit at police officers, and this would basically get them arrested. And so the sight of respectable middle class women being hauled in front of the courts and generated a lot of publicity. Yep. And so then there was this campaign basically to get arrested and get sent to jail, even though the treatment.
So it's weird that I'm thinking this, but I'm kind of like, even though it's a documentary, I'm like, and it's history, I'm like, Sharon, no spoilers. But but obviously with Lucy Worsley's particular time, I'm guessing that with this you would have seen a lot of her dressing up. There would have been a lot of her dressing up.
Dramatized.
There'll be a lot of dress and all that. How is her telling of this story? Because I know that there's been a lot of different ways. There was even the film Suffragettes, where they had what was it, Carey Mulligan in it?
And Carey Mulligan in it, yes.
Yeah, and it had Meryl Streep in a small role. But
she plays Emmeline Pankhurst.
So
and Helena Bonham Carter.
Yeah. So, but with that, how was Lucy Worsley's telling of this whole thing?
Yeah, so they get basically actresses to take a part of a well-known suffragette, and then they dramatize it. So they read their own letters, their diaries, and their accounts. So the story is told by Lucy Worsley talking direct to camera, but also these actresses saying, "This was my experience of being force-fed in jail." Because they then escalated from being arrested, they went on hunger strike, and then as soon as they got too weak, the government didn't want people to die in jail. These women to die, so they were released. But then when that didn't really stop the suffragettes they didn't shut them up basically.
Yeah.
They were still being arrested and still going on hunger strike. They started force feeding these women by forcing a rubber tube up their nose and then down into their gullet and then pouring liquid egg and milk down into their throats. And one of these women was sort of dramatically saying, "This was my experience of how I was force-fed while I was in prison." And then it escalated to women chaining themselves to rails. On one day, they had a mass campaign where they were going to smash as many windows as possible in London, and something like 287 properties were damaged in one afternoon, where they synchronized themselves, they concealed themselves all around London, and as soon as the Big Ben struck, they all started smashing windows. Ooh. And they caused the equivalent of something like £250,000 worth of damage in one afternoon. So this was a serious campaign, but they still were completely ignored. And it was only basically at the start of the First World War when they called a truce, saying that we will no longer participate in our direct action, we will support the war effort, that they were actually start to be taken seriously. So it was a long campaign, and women were actually given the vote. Some women over age 35 who owned property were given the vote in 1918, and then all women over 21 were eventually given the vote in 1928. So it's basically that long struggle to say why women got they're so desperate to have a say and to have a vote. And we see today the situation where we've had women prime ministers, and sometimes that works out okay, and sometimes that could be more of a challenge. But it is timely. I was watching, I thought this is quite timely actually, that it's taken from the first prime minister, obviously Margaret Thatcher, was something like 50 years, was it, from when women got the vote to when we had the first MP within a couple of years, Nancy Astor. But the first prime minister was obviously the 1970s, Margaret Thatcher. We've had two other women prime ministers since then. So yeah, that struggle so that even though we look at politics and we go, for women, and for me, I always think women fought long and hard. This wasn't just like a couple of women throwing stones to when they got the vote. This was like 60 years women were fighting and petitioning and lobbying Parliament to have the right to say, I own property, I have a right to my children, I have a right to my own body, and I have a right to have an interest in the political life of my country.
Yeah.
So vote, women.
So we're gonna file that one under people suck. So how many stars would you give it? I can tell you were quite taken with this. How many stars would you give?
I thought it was fascinating. Yeah, I certainly give it 4 stars, easily.
4 stars. Do you know what it was actually called? I've just written on Lucy Worsley Suffragette.
What is it? Yes, that's it.
Is that what it's called? Lucy Worsley Suffragette.
I think it's Suffragettes by Lucy Worsley.
All right. Okay. Gotcha. All right. So, and I could have done this differently, but anyway, it's back to you again, Sharon.
I could almost give it a 5-star because I thought it was almost flawless in its execution. Actually, I'm going to up it. I'm going to give it a 5-star. For a documentary, I thought it was flawless. I couldn't. There's nothing about it that I would like to say. Can you tell me more about that? It touched on everything you needed to know. So I'll give it a 5-star.
That's high praise indeed, isn't it? Sharon very rarely gives a 5-star. Good for you, mate. Good for you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. And now we go back to cinema, and Sharon, it's you again to talk to us about Emily, which I think might have. Oh, what?
Yeah, Emily.
Yeah, Emily. Yeah, which I think might have. Well, actually, no. Maybe I'm just saying it's about women. Therefore, it must have some similarities. But it may have. Tell me, does this have any similarities with Suffragettes?
In some ways, it does. Yeah, because this is the precursor to that movement. So this is not in the 1840s.
Yeah.
So this is about Emily Bronte.
Mm-hmm.
And Emily Bronte, some of you may not know, but Emily Bronte was part of a family who grew up at Haworth Parsonage in North Yorkshire, in Yorkshire. I think it's West Yorkshire, in Yorkshire. They were the children of a parson in a country parish church, and it's on the edge of the moors. And the extraordinary thing about this one family is they had 6 children, but 4 of them basically went on to do extraordinary things. One was less so, but their 3 daughters in particular, the 3 daughters that lived, they had 2 that died. The 3 that lived in particular went on to produce from this one small parsonage, Charlotte Bronte, who wrote Jane Eyre, and Shirley and Villette and the Professor. You got Anne Bronte, who wrote what has been described as the first feminist novel, The Tenant of Wildfowl Hall, as well as Agnes Grey. And then you've got Emily Bronte, who wrote Wuthering Heights, which by anyone's standard is an extraordinary novel. So this one small place inspired this sort of great works of fiction. And people have been fascinated by the Bronte, and they had their brother Bramwell, who had the potential to be as great as his sisters. He was an artist, he was a poet, he was I think what else he was, but he had potential. But his potential basically got lost in opium and drink. So you see their potential is fulfilled even though they're in this stifled existence, and he had the potential of going out into the world, and yet every opportunity he had, he frittered away by self-indulgence. And so it's an interesting contrast between he could have done whatever he wanted to, but he didn't. Yet these girls who were in this really confined existence managed to achieve these amazing literary feats.
So that's good. But from what I understand about this film takes a bit of a different tact.
Absolutely, yes. So people have been fascinated for years by the Brontes. People have been trying to work out what made them tick. How did this small parsonage, because I've been there and it is small, how did this one small party produce all this? And this is a film where we don't really know, because they didn't write diaries as such, but all we know about them is a few letters, which later some of their family members burnt some of their letters. So some of their letters and their works of fiction. So it leaves a lot for the imagination to sort of fill in the gaps. Yeah. And this is a film where filmmaker Frances O'Connor, who is an actress that we know from things like Mr. Selfridge, and a Jane Austen adaptation of Mansfield Park, she has basically written, I don't know if she wrote it, but she certainly directed this film, where they have filled in the gaps. They have created a story around Emily Bronte and about how she could have created Wuthering Heights. Now, Wuthering Heights is this mad, bad, dangerous to know Heathcliff and Catherine Earnshaw, and they have this sort of like tangled love-hate relationship where they go from loving each other passionately and deathlessly to not being able to bear each other, and they sort of hurt each other and hurt everyone around them, but they have this sort of deep, love.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to understand, how could this young woman in this tiny place write an extraordinary novel, so violent, so passionate, so extraordinary, so weird? How could she write that? So this is a story where they have created a story around it. So they've given, the focus is on Emily, so all her sisters and her siblings sort of fade into the background a little bit. Apart from Bramwell, you see him and their relationship, and how they imagine how Bramwell's indulgences, his love of drink and opium, how maybe that could have influenced Emily possibly. Would she have experimented with drink and drugs as well?
Yeah.
And how in this household of mainly these young girls, every now and then you would get these curates would join the parsonage to work in the church along with their father, and how a young man away from home, would he be attracted maybe to the young daughters of the house? And so they explores, because this novel is so passionate, they're saying, would Emily have had a passionate relationship to which she would inspire to write someone like Heathcliff? Could she imagine that character, or would it be based on someone she may have encountered? So you see the story of Wuthering Heights, and they play out scenes that we know from Wuthering Heights, where sometimes the character who plays Emily is Catherine, and sometimes she's Heathcliff. So you can see how they have thought, how would you get this character from this woman? So they've created all these scenarios where you could see this is the birth of Wuthering Heights.
Oh, okay, no, Sharon. Out of all of us, I would say you are the most. You're the what do you call it? You're the book fan.
You're the book, yeah. You're the
book fan. I was gonna say you're the most literature. I couldn't think of a word, but you're the book fan. So I'm sure that you've read Wuthering Heights. If there's going to be a book adaptation, you're the one who's going to be able to say, not like the book. They changed that, all that kind of stuff.
Are they called bibliophiles?
A bibliophile, yeah, someone who loves books. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, good word, Shaun. Good word.
Thank you.
So Sharon, you are our bibliophile. And so with that, and I've heard some criticism about this film that has, because obviously that essentially said something along the lines of, that they're going, well, she possibly couldn't have had an imagination. She must have just have written down what happened to her. And that has annoyed some people because they're trying to sort of say that, like, putting Emily Bronte in the Catherine thing and putting this guy who comes in the Heathcliff role and trying to sort of say that she lived it before he actually came. How did it work for you? Did that work for you, saying her life maybe inspired the book?
I understand what they were doing, because there's some scenes that were straight from Wuthering Heights. They've just recreated the scene. Some of them with her brother, and some of them with this man who, it's not a spoiler because in the film, he is her lover in the film. And I can see that why they did it as a device. But for me, it's like, didn't matter to me that it wasn't based on her life, because this was clearly a work of fiction. They have a bit in the beginning where there's like a seance, and I think knowing with the writings of the Brontes, they were not going to be. They were interested in the spiritual, but I can imagine how the children of a parsonage would probably be horrified by that sort of goings on. But I found it interesting, and I found it, it didn't bother me, because more or less from the beginning, you know that this is a work of fiction. This is not about the life of the Bronte sisters or the life of Emily Bronte, because the order of which things have happened are different, because we know that Charlotte was published first, and so but in this book it was like Wuthering Heights was published first, and it became a great success. Whereas no, it wasn't. It was Charlotte was the literary success first, and so we know that the facts are different, and so that didn't bother me, but I found in some ways, yes, I could see why they've done it, why they say that the only way someone who could possibly imagine someone like Heathcliff was because they had a passionate relationship of their own. Whereas I think Jane Austen was single. She managed to write these amazing love stories. I think imagination isn't there's a lack of experience isn't a hamper to writing fiction in some ways.
If you watch a film called Becoming Jane, it might argue with you.
Exactly. They always like to do these things in fiction. But on the whole, most people with a vivid imagination is because the more confined their lives are, often the more imaginative they become. So, and then living on the moors, I've walked across those moors because I have done the Bronte Pass pilgrimage, and you can imagine if this was your playground, you had the howling wind, you had the changing weather, you had the landscape, you would imagine something as passionate to meet that sort of landscape. And you listen and you read. They read widely, the Bronte sisters. They read everything they could get their hands on. And so their imagination was being fed constantly. So I don't think it's inconceivable that someone who hadn't had personal experience could yet still imagine these extraordinary things.
Right, cool. So how many stars would you give it?
Yeah, I liked it. It's quite a long film, and it can be gloomy in places because the life of the Bronte sisters wasn't a bunch of laughs. But bearing that in mind, I still really liked it. So I would give it a 4 because I thought
Ooh.
it was, yeah, and I liked the characters who played the sisters. I think they always do. I always feel sorry for Charlotte because she's one of my, and I like Anne as well. They're two of my favourites of the Bronte because I never really liked Wuthering Heights. But even saying that, I really liked it. So I thought, as a work of imagination, if you love the Brontes, the work of imagination is not a problem. So I liked it as a work of imagination and a work of a speculative fiction, and that I don't think these events that happened, but they still made an interesting watch and tried to give you a sort of little insight into these. And if it gets someone to read the books, then do that.
Cool, good stuff. So that is Emily, 4 stars for Emily. Now we go back to Disney Plus and Friends. Oh no, not Disney Plus, sorry. Netflix and Friends. This is on Disney Plus, and we're talking about She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. And there has been this whole thing. I mean, there is an arms race going on at the moment. Where has anybody? I know actually, Sharon. I know you have Paramount Plus. And Paramount Plus have essentially gone, let's look at all of the intellectual property that we have ownership of, and let's remake it. Let's make a new American Gigolo. Let's do this kind of stuff. And Disney Plus have decided, what do we own? We have Pixar, we have Marvel, we have Star Wars. And so they've decided that they're just going to flood our TV screens with a whole bunch of TV shows based on a whole bunch of things that they own the rights to, with varying results. Now, She-Hulk, as the title might to give the show its full title, She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, is about a lady called Jennifer Walters, who happens to be Bruce Banner's cousin. So she's Bruce Banner's cousin, and through various things, she ends up getting infected by Bruce Banner's blood, which means that she ends up having the same problem that he has, which is if she gets angry, she turns into a big, green, raging monster. And you meet Jen Walters at the beginning. She is quite, she's one of these fourth wall breaking characters. So she sort of like gets there and looks at the camera and she tells you what's going on. You go back into, you see how she got her powers, you see what happens with that. And there is a whole thing about it where Bruce Banner takes her down to Mexico to teach her how to use the powers, and he has this whole binder of 15 years of being the Hulk, saying this is what you have to do and that's what you have to do, and you can't control it because whenever you get angry, it just comes out. And she has a bit where she ends up being a better Hulk than he is because she can control it a lot better. And he's like, why? She's like, well, you just said, like, anger and rage. That's the base level for women. I have to control my anger and my rage every single day. And that happens in the first episode. And it kind of tells you where they're going with this show. So the fact is, she doesn't want to become a superhero. The last thing she wants is to be a superhero. She wants to just carry on with her life as a lawyer. But the superhero thing keeps getting in the way of it because in today's day and age, something happens in a courtroom, she turns into She-Hulk, she becomes this internet star, and then she's working as a DA, as a district attorney, and she gets fired from that because they're like, we can't have you as a superhero because every time you go up for a case, they're going to claim that it's unfair because people are going to want the superhero to win. So she ends up she has no job but gets hired by a law firm that doesn't want her as Jen Walters, only wants her as She-Hulk. So they want her to be as a lawyer, but as a superhero at work. Because they say they're setting up a superhero law division. And in this superhero law division, they want to do things like, if there's any collateral damage from a superhero's events, they're going to represent them. That kind of stuff. And it becomes this sort of law comedy. It becomes a law comedy that is not in any way, shape, or form interested in villain of the week, isn't interested in let's go have a big punch up. It's not interested in any of that whatsoever. It is a law comedy that makes fun of a lot of the stuff in the MCU. And it is, and I really like this. I really, really like this. I thought it was really good. I thought it was quite fun. I think it is, we've seen more and more of this happening. There have been some films, like there's some films that came out that I remember reviewing them and saying, this film isn't really about what's happening in the film. This film is about Marvel. This film is about Marvel and what they're doing. Like Spider-Man No Way Home was really about Marvel and the wranglings about Spider-Man and who owns Spider-Man for the last And Marvel have got to the point where they have started making shows about themselves, and this is no more clear than in the finale of this show. Like, if you go online, you see people talking about the finales of this show being some of the most meta things ever, and it is great, it is brilliant, and has a lot more in common with Suffragettes than you might think. Because it becomes this commentary on a woman's place in modern day America, and how, because I think it's fair to say, when you have most superheroes, they're worried about, I have this nemesis and I have to defeat them. She-Hulk is more concerned about finding a date and how she's going to find a date than she is about saving the world. And they have all these cameos from different Marvel characters. Benedict Wong shows up as Wong. Tim Roth shows up as the Abomination from the Incredible Hulk, all the way back, like, God knows how many. Yeah, no, Tim Roth shows up as and you have all these different characters that have been in different Marvel things that show up at it. And I think the way they pull it in, it's fun. And it has become this little corner where Marvel can do crazy stuff. And they can try things out that maybe you will never see on the big screen because if there's too much risk involved. But in She-Hulk, they can go crazy. They can go out there. They can do things. And they do go crazy. And they do bring you the dumber side of Marvel, the dumber superheroes, the dumber characters. I really liked it, and I would give it I'll give it a 4 out of 5. I think it is. I think it might be a bit Marmite. I think there's some people who will watch it and will hate it, and there's a certain section of the internet that anytime Marvel does anything that dares to put a woman in a front and center position, they kick off. They kick off and they say, "Oh, for goodness sake!" And this show is so meta. That this show, a big part of this show is like they anticipated it, and that is in the show. People talking about a female superhero and saying that she must be rubbish. She doesn't deserve her powers because she's why do we need a female Hulk? All that kind of, it's in the show, and I think the way it does it and the way it addresses it is just brilliant. But so yeah, 4 stars for She-Hulk. I would recommend watching it. And now, you may have been noticing that I've been trying to stall because I really don't want to talk about this. But Shaun, we come back to cinema. We come back to you. And you tell us about Halloween Ends.
We do.
And
Halloween Ends, eh?
One of the reasons I don't want to talk about it is because that title is a lie. We all know it's a lie. It's an absolute lie. But tell us about this lie of a film.
I will tell you about this film, okay? Because the first, as you know, my feelings on the previous one to this was just awful.
Halloween Kills, wasn't it? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Halloween Kills, yeah, terrible. Okay, so in this starts off with, like, the sort of prologue thing is there's this sort of, should we say, lad who he's babysitting, and something happens with the child he's babysitting, and he becomes a bit of a pariah because something nasty happens. So
yeah,
and he sort of because he gets a bit bullied. He gets a bit bullied because people say, "Oh yeah, it was your fault." They sort of, should we say, So anyway, he gets bullied, but some people feel sorry for him, so they sort of protect him. What's do you know? I've forgotten her name. Who's the
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Jamie Lee Curtis. Phil, sorry about that. Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis. That's it. I've totally forgotten. That's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah, I was like,
yeah, Jamie Lee
Curtis. It's a Halloween
Curtis.
movie. Who else are we talking about?
Yeah. So she feels a bit sorry for him because she knows about victimization, and she sort of rescues him for a little bit. And he's like, "Why you rescued me?" And then he has a bit of a relationship with the granddaughter, and then one day he's on his own and he gets bullied and he falls down and he falls into this place and he starts to become a bit strange. And obviously, there's like you say, it's quite funny. I don't know how to do this without putting too many spoilers in.
Okay, look, Shaun, it's a Halloween movie.
Okay,
Mike Myers is going to find some convoluted reason to come back.
So anyway, he falls under this bridge thing. There's something going on because you get the lead up at the start about something at this bridge. Anyway, he gets sort of chucked over a bridge, and he ends up going through this sewer thing where obviously he it's like a transference of power, should we say? It's like a transference of power.
Yeah.
So like you're saying about Halloween Ends.
Is he like possessed then?
Yeah,
No, not really. Well, not really. He's like Michael, because he becomes a bit angry. He says, Michael, show me how to do it, because obviously this whole town in Huddersfield, show me how to do it. Show me what you do and all that. And so it's like the passing of the torch, shall we say, and then
a whole bunch of people get stabbed and killed.
That's it. It's quite long. It's a real long lead up to it, and it's like, come on, something happened. We know what's going to happen. However, having said all that,
okay,
there are some real nods to the original. There's some real nods, and they're almost shot for shot scenes. There's one I remember, and I thought, wow, there's a bit on the stairs where he's looking through the stairs of the barrier. So, and it's just like the head's through there, and there's quite a few, and there's nods to Psycho in there. There's like, so should we say Shower? Okay. So yeah, I mean, so it has got a few redeeming qualities, not a lot, but it has got a few that, yeah. So and as you know, it's Halloween, and it ends up with like, you know, the
blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Shaun, I'm really sorry.
No. I'm glad about that, because I mean, you can say it. No, because I mean, I'm just running out to sum it all up. But yeah,
I'm really sorry. I just have zero enthusiasm for this, especially because the title is such a lie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a lie.
It is quite interesting when the whole town turns out at the end to, shall we say, witness something, which is like, maybe that's ends, but it hasn't ended.
The thing is, I'll tell you, I hate it. Right, I hate it when you have TV shows that don't end because they think, we can still get some money out of this. They're usually American.
Purely money.
And I feel like there's some things that they just need to stop. They need to stop making Friday the 13th movies. They need to stop making Halloween movies, because there is nothing that you are bringing that is new. That is and I will never find out if they actually do something that's new. I know Jamie Lee Curtis has said this is the final time she's playing Laurie Strode, but we've heard that before.
Yeah. It's all to do with this, isn't it? You know what I mean?
It's all to do with money. And this is a character that has been killed multiple times. Both of them, Mike Myers and Laurie Strode, have been killed multiple times. You're still getting Halloween movies. Anyway, sorry, Shaun. How many stars?
Okay. I don't want to be too mean to this one, because as I say,
be mean.
Did have a few redeeming qualities, but I did find it quite boring, and I was waiting for something to happen, and there wasn't really anything new, so it's going to get a 2-star, I think.
2 stars.
2 stars. Yeah, because I just found it really, really long. Found it too long. Before
Without even watching it, I agree with you, Shaun. Okay. I mean, once they said they were making this film, they're like some films
that was 2-star.
Yeah, exactly. The films that once they announced them, I'm like 2 stars. It's like it's like when they said they made Coming to America, the sequel to Coming to America. The second they announced they were making it, second they had that title, I was just kind of like, no, 1 star. It's going to be rubbish. It's going to be no. Even the idea you're making this film, the only way you could have made this film good was if you made it Coming to Zamunda. That would have been worth it. Apart from that, no, rubbish. Get out of my face. But anyway, I'm gonna try and control my rage. I'm gonna take a leaf from Jennifer Walters and control my rage and dampen it down and prevent myself becoming a big green rage monster. And we get to a final thing. And Shaun, I have remembered what it is that I saw. And it is something that I think you would like. So we could either talk about the thing you saw, War Below. The War Below. We can talk about The World Below, or we can talk about The Bear on Disney Plus.
Bear. I mean, let's let Sharon choose. I know that's a bit difficult. So The War Below or The Bear, up to you.
Oh, I was going to watch The War Below. So I'm interested about what The Bear is about as well.
Yes.
So,
all right. Let's go. I
know what The War Below is about, so let's go with The Bear then.
Yeah. Good shout. I was going to say that exactly the same. So that'd be good for a few of us to see something.
Okay, cool, good stuff. So, The War Below, does it have anything to do with water warfare by any chance? Sea
No, it's
warfare.
World War
No,
One, isn't it?
it's World War
Oh,
One.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. All right. Okay. Now, so the bear is was it is 8 part? You know, is this? Yes, 8 parts. An 8 part series on Disney Plus. 8 parts. Each episode is like half an hour long. And this is the kind of thing that Shaun, I think you would love. It's set in Chicago, and it's all about these characters. And it's the idea behind it is that there's this character Carmi that you meet, and he used to be a chef in the best restaurant in the world in New York City. His brother died and left him this sandwich restaurant, the family sandwich restaurant in Chicago. And he goes in there and he's trying to sort of like set up this whole thing and get this restaurant to actually work quite well. And when you go in there, you find that he goes in there and he's butting up against all the people who worked for his brother for years and have done stuff the same way over and over again. And their cousin is the person who's like the front of the house and doesn't want anything to change. And he's kind of like, no, what are you trying to do? That's too fancy. Go and do it this way. and so you have this cast of characters that just bounce off each other in this kitchen. And it's about them trying to turn this thing around. It's about them making food. There's a little bit of like Master Chef with swearing, kind of like thing kind of going on. And it just becomes this wonderful slice of life thing, looking at this group of people trying to achieve something. And I think the reason why I think you like it, Shaun, is just because of the mood of it. The characters, the dialogue is really, really good. And it's the fact that even though it's something about, like, you might not care about cooking food or making food or anything, but it's about these guys in this heightened situation because he's trying to, as he's trying to save this restaurant and he's trying to turn this restaurant around, he's trying to come to terms with why his brother killed himself. He's trying to come to terms with like his family. He's trying to come to terms with some things that happened in his past when he was being a chef in New York. And then you have this new chef who comes in, Sydney, and he's trying to sort of like bring her up because she has a really good vision for what the thing can be. And then you have this guy who does the bakery. He does the bakery and he just gets absolutely obsessed with making the perfect donuts. And he spends like, you have a guy who gets obsessed with making the perfect donut, and you have the and at the same time the guy who's at the front of the house, Richie, he's looking around and he's seeing like the pub that was on the corner, that like the Irish pub that was on the corner in Chicago is closing down and is going to be replaced with something, and he's just despairing about the fact that the life that he knew in the Chicago he knew is dying around him. And they find out that his brother owed money to his uncle, who is played by Oliver Platt. And I don't know about you, but Oliver Platt is the kind of person who, whenever he shows up on screen, I'm like, I like watching this guy. I will watch Oliver Platt or whatever. And he shows up in it, and there's a funny sequence where they're catering for a kid's birthday party, and they end up drugging a whole bunch of 5-year-olds.
Oh no.
Yeah, but and the thing is, like, each episode obviously is only about half an hour long, so, or even shorter, because I think it originally showed in America with ads. It has one episode that is all shot in one shot around this kitchen, and it is just really, really, you know when you finish watching it, you go, what was that about? Well, a guy tries to save a restaurant. Yeah, it was a bit slight, but I actually really, really enjoyed it because of the different characters, the way they spoke to each other, the way they bounced off each other, and the way that you sort of end up being drawn into this world of working in a professional kitchen where they say things like, and they don't explain things, but like they're walking around the kitchen and they say things like hands, corner, behind, and you can just see the way they all work together trying to get food done for a certain amount of time, how stressful it is, all that. I thought it was a really, really good show, and all in all, I would give it a 4 out of 5, and I think you would actually quite like it.
Oh,
it's
okay.
a kind of show that it's difficult to explain what's good about it, and because when you talk about it, it sounds very, very slight. Guy tries to save a restaurant.
Yeah, it's funny. That's the trouble, though, Toes, isn't it? There's so much to watch, mate. There's so much to watch. But,
there is.
So yeah, maybe we get round to that. But it sounds interesting.
Yeah, I think if you I know that there's so much to watch. So if you want to save yourself some rubbish, I actually think that The Bear is something that would be right up your alley. Definitely you, Shaun. Sharon, I think maybe, although there might be a couple of bits where you might, clutch your pearls.
My inner wincer-ometer might sort of kick in.
Yeah, especially with the Richie character. But if nothing else, just watch the first episode because there's a bit where they end up with a queue outside the restaurant, and a fracas, shall we say, breaks out in the queue, and the way they deal with the fracas in the queue, I think is very is I found it extremely I found it quite funny. So I think it's one of those things that where it's probably a comedy drama. It's coming a comedy drama, but I think it's quite good, and I love the fact that it doesn't hang around for so long. There's probably going to be a season 2, but this isn't. I haven't gone to the stage yet where I'm like, oh, why should I? Yeah, well, I might not watch the second one. But the first one was good. It's like I was thinking about this. Talking about stuff that should have ended early. I was thinking about the TV show Heroes. Did any of you watch the TV show Heroes?
I think I caught a couple of episodes, but
I watched the first 2 seasons and then I gave up after about the 3rd episode of the 3rd season because, as you say, it was flogging a dead horse.
Is that the one where there's like one of the heroes trying to kill the other heroes to get their power or something like that?
Yes.
Skylar. I watched Skylar. That's it. Yeah, I watched a couple.
Save the cheerleader.
Save the cheerleader. Save the world. Yeah. And Heroes, I remember the first season was so good, and you could almost see where they thought, oh, this is so good. And they, for me, one of the biggest problems was they had a good bad guy, and then they went, oh, we can't get rid of him because you can see the point. You can see the point where they almost did a reshoot, where that was the point where that guy would have died, and then they came up with some weird nonsense to say, oh no, he isn't, and they came back in season 2, he's still around, and that one decision destroyed the whole show.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned. But anyway, my point is the bear is not Heroes. It hasn't done that. It has not done that. Anyway, that is it. So with all that today, I think you guys have a very difficult decision trying to figure out who won this week.
I think we pretty much know, don't we? I think it was a walkover this time. Like if the Conservatives go for a general election, it would probably be the same. So we can look at cinema as the Tories, and if it was an opinion poll, cinema would be the Tories.
That is only for this week because I like cinema.
Only for this week. I know I like cinema. Cinema's had a bad time this week. So, but I mean, I'm sure we'll
like the better. Country. We've had a
yeah. It's like it's true. It's true. We got like. I don't know what Black Adam. I don't know if I'm going to enjoy that or not. But that's out, isn't it?
Black Adam. I'm expecting Black Adam to be solid and by the numbers, and to be a middle of the road 3-star film. That's what I'm expecting from that film.
See, I like The Rock, but do I like The Rock enough to want to go to see a superhero film? That's my question. That's my debate.
Yeah.
My inner debate.
Yeah, we'll see, and we'll see if I actually make it to a cinema.
Right, that'd be cool. Right, so
that'd be nice.
It's going to be a bit hit and miss whether I get to do next week and the next couple of weeks because I'm off to Thailand on Tuesday.
Oh yes.
So I will try, but if I can't, I can't. I'll keep in touch and.
Yeah. Don't you worry, Shaun. You know our policy. When Shaun's in Thailand, we'll take whatever Shaun we can get. But we will not expect or put that on him to be up at 2:00 in the morning to talk to us.
And I'll just have to bite the bullet and watch stuff.
Yes, and I will actually have to get to the cinema. But until next week, then, it's a goodbye from me.
It's a goodbye from me.
And a goodbye from me.
How do you say goodbye in Thai?
They basically got the same, like it's just the same, like car, saudi cap.
Saudi cap.
Yeah, saudi cap. Same thing, yeah.
All right, cool, good. Until next week. Yes, and we'll get like I'm sure we'll get Facebook updates on exactly what Shaun's up to.
Okay.
See you guys.
See you later. Bye. Bye.